Hey there, folks, and welcome back to the Dammâseq Campaign. I am actually doing some post-commentary for this particular episode, episode 57, because when I was doing the recording, I didn't set up my audio correctly and accidentally didn't record the in-game audio or my live commentary audio, so I'm doing some post-commentary with the Imperator room, just main menu music playing in the background for this recording. So that's what's going on here. I'm not recording my audio as I play like normal. I'm actually rewatching the completed episode 57 recording and then doing a post-commentary overlaid on top of it. So that's what's going on in this video, just to be clear. Now, here at the start of the recording, I was just commenting that I just finished the second war with Kemet, and also had integrated Tunip in the previous episodes, meaning that I now have a lot of new territory to attend to. I'd already gone through and done sort of one pass over it, deleting all the extra buildings, figuring out my capital locations, getting those fortified largely, and at this point I'm just waiting for my levies to be ready again to do some roading. At this point I thought I'm going to use the Canaan levy to road in the south, because they're large enough now to do that, and I'll probably use the Kadesh levy to road in the north. Also noting that I had just won the city of Jedet back over to my client Jedet, so that's pretty good. Kemet at this point is fighting Viper Mountain Gnome, one of their breakaway provinces, which they're going to win, just given a bit of time. And I'm noting as well that Petra is in pretty big peril of Kemet going for them sometime soon. Now, at this point I'm also starting to talk about how I took a bunch of slaves in the recent war, and I'd also noted, by the way, that instead of just calling it the Wars with Kemet or the Kemet Wars, because there's probably going to be a sequence of them throughout the campaign, I'm going to be calling them the Kemetic Wars, which has sort of a Punic War ring to it. So that was just the second Kemetic War that we had done, and we did the first Kemetic War under Abdestart. So here, after the second Kemetic War, we had taken a number of slaves, but not the same number or near the same number as the first Kemetic War, meaning that we have a large number of these Kemetic populations living in the Canaan area, but I was debating here, should I move them up to the Dammâseq area like I did after the first Kemetic War, and I ultimately decide that I don't really think it's necessary. I think I look at the actual the percentages of culture and religion and whatnot, and the diversity in the Canaan area, but I basically settle on the idea that the Canaan area is actually stable enough that I don't really need to move them away to preserve stability. And a lot of the areas of Canaan are actually already on cultural assimilation, including the area that Rapahu is in, Rapahu, the port city, where most of those slaves are currently located. Rapahu is my most southwesterly port provincial capital, so a lot of the slaves were placed there, basically. So I ultimately decide I'm not going to move them at the minute. I may come back to this idea in future episodes if I want to get a workforce moved somewhere else, but for now I decide not to do anything. I also talk about here that I'm waiting now for my political influence to get to around 180. Here I decide to reopen the Wonder Builder to verify the numbers here. And I had thought at the minute, okay, I think 180 is the amount that I need for my 3 effects, but I'm going to actually, just for checking's sake, I'm going to reselect them, not in the right order, but I'm going to reselect them to verify the amount of PI that I needed. I knew that I needed about 10k gold or so, which I had enough of at this point, but the PI is the main bottleneck resource as usual. So here I'm scrolling through looking for the effects that I want. I go for Omen Observations, Honored Leader, and Expanding Culture once I find it. And then I verify here, okay, it is 180 PI that I need, and so then I make a big declaration. I'm not going to spend any PI on anything until I build this wonder, because I've been putting off the wonder multiple times now. I really want to get this wonder started under Ahiram, as he is the 5th ruler of Dammâseq. 5 is my favorite number. I'd consider it very auspicious for the campaign if our wonder was begun under Ahiram. I don't think it's going to get finished under him, as he is, as we see here from this event. Very nicely timed there. He is aging. He's gained gout in this event. He already had arthritis as well, so he's definitely getting older. He has been pretty healthy so far, but that's not necessarily going to stay the same, and his wife as well is quite old and ailing as well. So generally speaking, we're kind of in a race against time to start the wonder under Ahiram, just as kind of a fun side project. Here, Ahiram's scheme influence underway has led to him getting some of these events, including the chance to trade stability for PI, which is generally something I wouldn't do, and here I take a look at this option here. 30 PI for 10 stability, or just gain 5 stability. And I note here in the actual lost audio that this is not a good trade. Even though I'm trying to gain PI, and even though I have positive trend already, I'd have increased positive trend if I lost 10 stability. It's not worth it to lose 10 stability even to get 30 PI, so I decide not to go for that. I end up getting the 5 stability and just losing some loyalty on that guy, which I end up thinking is a pretty good trade, honestly. And we actually do still have positive trend even at 55 stability, so that's pretty good. And at this point, I'm talking, I think, about wanting to reorganize my fleets eventually into a northern and southern transport fleet with a sort of actual war fleet that lives kind of in the middle, or that is, I guess, docked or has its home port in the middle for use in future Comitic wars or against other naval nations. Here I note that Mari is fighting some of their neighbors in the hills, which is good to know, because that means they're not fighting people closer to me. If Mari, for example, attacked Ebla or Arna, that could actually change my plans, as they wouldn't be entering into regions that I control, but they would be creating new borders with me, which would present some problems. Here I'm noting this event where Heimsal wants us to trade manpower for political influence, and this is something I'm more open to. 2,500 manpower, once a number that would have been inconceivable, is now actually a pretty reasonable trade-off for 20 PI, and I do end up going for it after some more discussion about my manpower income. 317 manpower per month makes a trade like this pretty okay, and the PI gain, even though it isn't, if you really count the income of both manpower and PI, this isn't actually a very efficient trade, but I do think it is fine to do right now just to get a PI boost, as I'm trying just to get to 180 PI. At this point, I'm basically not doing anything, because a lot of the stuff I would be doing in terms of national management is PI, has the PI cost, and so I'm really holding back from doing any national micromanagement because of the PI cost in order to save up to 180 PI. So there actually is some reason to sort of take bad trades to get more PI faster, to get out of my PI saving period, because then I can do things like micromanage different policies and whatnot. Here I have a bit of a trading situation where I have one more trade slot. I'm looking to see what it is that I lost to get the trade slot. I wish this UI told you that you either have a new trade slot from, for example, population, which I think is what happened here, or that you've lost a trade good. So here I think, okay, I actually think I lost Lapis Lazuli, so I retrade for it. And then immediately I get another notification, and I'm thinking, what now? And looking at the number here, I conclude, I think I just lost the Lapis trade that I just traded for, because I was at +5 a minute ago. Although I'm not entirely sure at this point, and I'm actually still not sure at this point what happened here. I think I lost a copy of Lapis, maybe the Lapis trade was disrupted, or a mine was destroyed, or something like that. Lapis is, of course, a very rare resource, so any number of things could have happened. We're trying to hoard it for ourselves, of course. But here I decide I need to trade for something else, because I can't get Lapis again. So I start to consider what I want to trade for, and I look at a couple different options here. Looking to see, are any of my resources, for example, something I should trade for externally? I have a lot of the resources that I want from the province being internally produced as best I can. So I'm sort of considering my options here, wondering what I should get. I think I ultimately go for Saffron at this time, because that I can get one more copy. Saffron has a really big effect locally, 10% slave output, so pretty worthwhile, all things considered. Now here again, I think I start talking about my naval plans to split my transport fleet into 2 groups. I'll eventually have to do some math, maybe off camera, because the number of levies from the north and south are not the exact same, so I'd have to sort of figure that out. Here we apparently get another slot available. I think this is just more from Pop, so I trade for another copy of Saffron for more output, and also the ruler popularity bonus per month, which is a pretty good bonus to be sure. Then I go back to talking about the Navy thing, and then I get interrupted because we have legal chicanery. I make some Better Call Saul references here. He defecated through a sunroof, and all that stuff. So here I basically am dealing with this forgery situation with family head Gizgo Milkermid, and I consider the options here. I could make him pay the state 50 gold or get some legitimacy. And I note here that this is a pretty good situation to get 50 gold, but 5 legitimacy is a pretty good boost, and there's not a lot of ways to get legitimacy quickly, so I think it is better to go for that. More legitimacy is more freeman happiness, which will, among other things, help stabilize our nation. And speaking of stabilizing our nation, we get some more stability from this event here from the High Priest. that's pretty handy. And again, there's a lot of these periods in the video where I'm just kind of like scrolling around talking about something. I don't remember what I was talking about. Probably the naval plans more, but trading for some furs from Petra. And yeah, at this point I'm just waiting for my levies to be ready again in order to get those roads constructed. I'm planning here that I probably want to build at least one road all the way down to Eloth in my south, and then up in the north, in the northern parts of Ebla, I want to road all the capitals together as best I can. Here my wife dies, which is very sad, and even sadder than my wife dying is that she takes her good charisma with her. So now I'm looking for a new high charisma cutie to marry. So I first accidentally look at all the guys, so that's not going to fly for Ahiram. So we try again, open the marriage once, this time it's all the women. So I note here that there's not a lot of options. The best option is my sister, Ashura, so that's not a great option. She's in very poor health and doesn't even have super great charisma. She does have higher charisma and zeal, which are the stats that I want from a partner. Here I am noticing that she's my sister. And then I'm noticing, okay, well, if I don't go for her, and I don't need to get remarried here, but if I were to get remarried, ideally someone older that I wouldn't have more kids with to skirt my succession. Suhaima, who is the next highest charisma option, does have better zeal, so a good alternative. Ultimately, the stat I'm looking for the most, though, is charisma for the tyranny reduction. And I'm tempted here to go for a marriage with my sister, Ashera, but I am also noting I want to avoid incest if I can really help it. I'm allowed to do it under my nation's laws, but obviously it's kind of weird even if it's allowed, so I'm really debating here. Should I go for this? Should I marry Ashera? Noting as well at this point that I think I forgot to marry Ashera to anybody, so she's just been unmarried this whole time. And here I comment, and she's also a lunatic, I comment that I wish that in this game unmarried relatives would petition you for marriages on their own, because then I'd remember. It's not that I didn't want her to get married, I just forgot to marry her. So at this point, though, I guess it works out. She is 20 years my junior, which is a bit weird, but we're both really old, so I guess it's not that weird. We're also siblings, that's the weirdest part, to be clear, but here I'm saying, you know what, maybe for the sake of the state, I do need to go ahead and bite the bullet and marry my sister, just for national tyranny reduction purposes more than anything else. I'm really, really debating here, should I go for it, and then I go for it. So the marriage has happened. I think this is the first incest marriage of the campaign, I'm not entirely sure, but this is one that shouldn't produce any children, and we're just going to cross our fingers and toes that Ahiram will sensibly not have sex with his sister, even though they're married. This is just I guess a political marriage more than anything else. So we marry Ashera, our sister, so it's got to happen. We need the charisma. So at this point, I'm bemoaning my woes. It's like I don't have any good charisma. I just don't have any good characters at all. I'm also noticing here that Ahiram is super, super rich, which I just didn't notice until now. He has 18,000 gold personally, which I didn't notice. And I'm hoping at this point that he bequeaths this to either his son, Danel, who would become Danel II if he became the king, or to the state, because this is a lot of money. And I'm not entirely sure where he got all this money from. I think it has been getting passed down father to son, or I guess, ruler to heir, over the years. Here I'm noting the charisma and zeal bonuses from my sister wife, so that's pretty good. And then, yeah, at this point I'm just waiting again for my levies to be ready to get to roading. Again, like I said, this is a pretty slow-paced episode, so I'm just kind of sitting around waiting for stuff to happen. And yeah, we're building up our PI in the background, and that's one good thing about this episode is it was a wait for the PI anyways, so waiting around is actually the strategy of the episode. It's not just kind of an accident. I also do need to colonize some of this land in my borders or in my exterior, but a lot of this land isn't colonizable yet because we don't have enough same culture people. Here, I think that my Canaan levy is ready, and it is, so I can raise the Canaan levy to get to work roading the south. Moab and Adab doesn't really have a ton of urban centers to connect together, and essentially north to south it's just a line of capitals. Aside from the West Dead Sea area that's mostly uncolonized, I'm not going to road over in there yet because it's not in my nation yet, so I'll have to come back to that later. That doesn't happen in this episode, obviously, but I will have to come back to that later. Here I am noting that there's these large number of uncolonizable wasteland areas bordering me by the desert, which I wish that I could fill in somehow. I'm still not sure exactly why they're not filled in. This is, of course, a modded map, so maybe it's just some map weirdness. As I've said before, this is a genuinely very, very impressive work of map modding, and in many ways, I like this map much more even than the base game map. So I'm not complaining that this map is not good. It's a very, very good map. But even the base game map had some uncolonizable land fill-in weirdness around Egypt and whatnot. So it happens here or there. Now, I don't know exactly what I'm talking about here. I'm apparently having a long discussion about something because I'm just scrolling around as I do when I'm ranting about something. So who knows what I was talking about? Probably something very, very spicy. Lots of hot takes from me, it seems. At some point, though, I will eventually raise the Canaan levy and get them to work on roading. One of these days, I get around to doing that. Actually, here I'm talking about the Western Dead Sea province. That's probably what I'm talking about. Because we do control a little bit of it, including our current capital in the quote-unquote province, which I think is called Zohar or something like that. And I'm noting as well the road plans here. I want a road from Hatzerim over to Sawar, and then we'll get our guys going now. So the Canaan levy is large enough to do its own roading. Road from Hatzerim to Sawar, basically just straight across like this. And then the plan is to road them northward up to, I think Batir is the name, and then from Batir up to Dibon, north of that, a bit later. So we're going to get to work on these guys. Now, the Kadesh levy in the north isn't raisable yet. There's still about a year before they're ready, but we can at least start roading down here. And the road down here is going to be a lot more simple. It's just basically a big loop to complete around the Dead Sea, and then a single road going down through Zophar, down to Eloth, down in the very far south. I also considered, I may even comment on this later in the original audio, building some forts around Eloth against the edge of Moab and Edom and the Red Sea area. I don't know, honestly, in the future if I want to directly conquer the Red Sea area. I think that it's probably a good idea because sections of it are the edge of the map on the sort of Arabian Peninsula side, so it could be really good to control that. And I could see, for example, my endgame goals with conquest around the area being the Red Sea area, the Mediterranean coastal delta areas of Egypt, and then all the way over to essentially the Kyrenaica area. I don't remember what it's called in the Bronze Age, but yeah. Here we get an event where some guy was caught, and I wasn't even paying attention to what I clicked there. I clicked something. I think I made him pay me money or something like that. Actually, no, I think I gained popularity for torturing him. So here I am completing the road. This road here will help with mobility a lot. Moab and Edom is just lots of plains and hills, so pretty hard to maneuver around. So it'll be good to get the road finished here. Here I'm talking more about the Dead Sea province that I need to eventually fill in by colonization. At this point, colonization, which mostly just costs manpower, is going to be easy enough to do with the manpower that I have. I actually get enough manpower per month to colonize once a month at least, but colonization is slowed down a lot by the colonization debuff, where it prevents neighboring locations from getting colonized. Here we trade some money for some stability and a bonus for religious tech, which is great, so lots of stability now. Negative trend at 65, but 65 stability is 65 stability, so perfectly happy with that. Continue the roading efforts over here, getting some more trade deals as well. Yeah, like I said, this is a pretty low-key episode, so not really a lot to comment on, but here I'm noting that once I get this road connected up, also my forts in the north are finishing now, and I have some forts in Moab and Edom that are going to finish pretty soon as well, so we'll come back down to look at that in a minute. Once I get this all roaded up, movement around here will be sped up quite a bit. It's possible that I could either use the existing cities that are in sort of the neighboring tiles, or build some more cities around here, but Moab and Edom really does feel like kind of a backwater. I don't really want to invest too much into it. Just want to get it roaded up so that the loop around the Dead Sea is complete for mobility, and then build one single road at least down to Eloth just for troop movement, but I don't really think I need to have a bustling, center in Moab and Edom. So we'll see later on if I change my mind and decide to make Moab and Edom a core part of my nation. Technically speaking, all of my Canaanite areas should be considered core. I do at this point still just really consider Hermesh, Kadesh, Jordan Rafali, those areas to be kind of my real core, but over time I'll eventually, I think, broaden my mindset to include more of these areas. Here I'm checking to see if I can do some colonization yet. The answer is largely no. because I don't have enough correct culture people nearby. It's just going to be a matter of time, and unfortunately there's no way as a monarchy to have like colonizer units walk over to take over this area. Just controlling the Dead Sea province would let me finish roading and build another loop closer to the Dead Sea shore, as it were, kind of between, I don't know the names of these cities. I think that's Sierra Shalem up there, and like Soar and whatnot. That would just be nice to get. I get another religious advancement here, and I'm looking for another tech to go for. I don't really have at this point any specific tech plans in mind now that I've gotten my wonder techs that I need. So I'm just kind of looking for something to put the tech point into, because at this point I sort of don't know. I think at this point I've gotten all of the PI techs that I know of, so I'm just sort of looking around to see what looks good. And I think I spent a few minutes actually on the tech tree, just kind of examining, considering some options here. There are lots of good options. Like all these techs do incrementally add a lot to the nation, so I'm taking some time to consider here what I want to go for. I could have actually looked a bit further down, I think, to spot some more PI techs, but I don't think I get around to doing that. So here I'm just looking around, considering some different options, and debating what to go for. I actually don't remember what I went for, so I'm just like you right now. I'm similarly wondering what past misadventurer decided to do. Considering, I think, triumphal coins, which I don't think I go for, but it would be kind of interesting. I don't need the manpower right now, so I don't go for that. Continue looking around. Actually, I remember what I went for now. I go for household gods, because this is a found city cost modifier reduction. I want to build a few more cities in the near future. I don't really need to build a lot more cities on capitals, although I do need to do a few more of that. But I also want to build some cities in the middle of some of my areas to add more stuff to road to. Also noting here that I actually can't use my Civ Tech points anymore. I need to wait till I have 3 to advance any one Civ Tech category. So I'm actually unable to use the Civ Tech points for now. I have to wait for another set of all my techs to be advanced in order to get 2 more Civ Tech points to then spend 3 of them on one of the Civ Tech end cap things. So the Civ Tech thing, I tried to do it a second ago. I can't turn off the icon, so it's just going to be up there for a while going forward. For the rest of the campaign, most likely it'll just kind of be up there permanently. So sorry about that. I literally can't. I tried to right click to disable it to turn the notification off, and it didn't happen, so it's stuck up there. Here I decide to finally get the Kadesh levy going and get them to work. I think I also accidentally raised the Ebla levy for a second when I click up here. I'm going to split the Kadesh levy in 2 and have them both road. At this point, there's a fair bit of roading to do in the north of... Yeah, there I raised that levy there. I actually don't notice that I raised that levy for a second. I eventually notice and I lower them. But what I need to do is connect up the various cities of the Ebla region. I have a little bit of roading in the very south of the Ebla region that I controlled. The rest of it was controlled by Tunip, of course, and then I integrated Tunip. Here, I'm kind of remembering that, because I was looking at that capital where I raised the levy backs, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I think I meant to move the capital down here, which is the case. If I went back and I rewatched the previous episode, I think that I had said at the time that Somalil is the best location because it's a riverside farm. It is really close to my other cities on the other side of the river, but it's still better than having a non-riverside plains tile, which is just flatly worse for a city. So I had fortified it in order to remind myself that I should move the capital there, and then when I moved the capitals in the previous episode, I had forgotten to move that capital, so I attend to that there. Here, my army is making its way up to Devon, and then I think either now or a bit later, I realize I need to get their movement order to go all the way up to Rabat Aman, north of Devon, to get that full loop connected up. Here we have the pomegranate harvest spoiled event, where essentially we have some pomegranate shenanigans at work. We seem to have a lot of these fruit events happen here and there. So here I'm debating actually for a while what to go for this one. I don't know why. I think I actually spent a long time talking about... I think at this point I went on this rant about, what was I actually don't remember what I was talking about, but here I'm looking at the different options, talking about whether I want to secure pomegranate supply from abroad. What was I talking about? I must have been talking about something. I think I was talking about, what what was it? I don't remember. I was talking about something here. I think I may have been talking about the show Rome, the HBO show Rome. I think I remember talking about that. I really like. I was just rewatching it recently, and I really like the HBO show Rome. I think it's a great show. I'll just talk about it now, I guess, while I'm waiting for me to, in the past, continue along the playthrough, but or the campaign. But the HBO show Rome, if you have HBO, is a great show. Really great depiction of ancient Rome, and I really recommend it as a fan of history. I think many of you who watch this content probably are fans of history as well. I don't know what else you're doing here. So if you haven't seen the HBO show Rome, genuinely a huge recommendation from me. I really like that show. It's also a really like nuanced show. I think that's what I was talking about here. I think I'm remembering now, because I liked, for some reason, remembered that I really liked the HBO show Rome, and I wanted to talk about it. So yeah, so at some point I stopped talking about the HBO show Rome, and I returned to playing the game. I don't know what on earth I'm spending so much time talking about here, but I mean, I can't blame my past self. The HBO show Rome is definitely really good quality stuff. It's just it's also something else I like about it. I think I was talking about this at the time, but I really like that it presents, as far as I'm aware, quite an authentic depiction of really famous historical events like the assassination of Julius Caesar, or Julius Caesar, in a way that's a lot more nuanced and addresses the complexity of the situation, where we can't just look at these ancient people with a modern sensibility and evaluate them really without thinking about the context they were within. And to this day, I think people try to use these ancient situations to make modern political points without really acknowledging the context that they were within. We can't talk about the assassination of Caesar in just a positive or negative way nowadays with modern sensibilities without understanding the complexities of the ancient situation, where, Caesar was both, he was simultaneously a populist and also a giant tyrant, right? At the same time. And people want to compare modern day political figures to ancient people like Caesar, and they, I think, want to use these ancient situations, these ancient characters, ancient figures, to draw this point about modern day things. But you can't just make these comparisons without an understanding of the history. Like Caesar wasn't just generically a tyrant; he was a tyrant to the elites of Rome, and arguably to the people, but it's more complicated. And Caesar's assassination wasn't done by a bunch of really pure-hearted people who had no ulterior motives. It was done by essentially the establishment of Rome, the Senate, and the patricians, who were actually correctly feeling threatened by Caesar, because he did genuinely represent an existential threat to the Roman Republic. And so it's so much more complicated than just Caesar was a populist, and it's as simple as that. Because there's very good reason to think that Caesar wasn't actually personally politically a populist in a true believer sense. He was a savvy politician, and his actions throughout his lifetime, and his own writings really establish this, make it clear that he knew what he was doing, right? And perhaps some modern political figures one can draw parallels to, he needs to be thought of not as a true believer populist, but as a clever politician using populism for greater personal gain and greater ideological purposes. And I think that you can remember ancient figures like Julius Caesar, Julius Caesar, through that lens without compromising on the fact that, you can't just directly equivocate him or compare him to a modern political situation without any of that nuance. And I think that's what I like about the HBO show Rome, is that, it was made in the 2000s. Obviously, one could think of recent things in American history, at least, where there was, for example, an American president who was doing things that were considered, perhaps kind of tyrannical by some, and you could have made these comparisons, and people were making those comparisons at the time, but the show didn't, bog down its historical authenticity in modern parallel. And I think that the best kind of historical fiction presents the history as realistically and authentically as possible, and lets the audience make the comparisons and make the similarities themselves. It doesn't tell the audience, this is just like George Bush. It lets the audience think, okay, maybe in some ways one could compare our modern situation to this ancient situation. But ultimately, I think that the best historical fiction presents to you the ancient scenario, the ancient context, and the actions people took at the time. Because ultimately, I think that like the human heart and human motivation, human action is actually quite timeless. People's motivations are often something that transcends, the circumstance of the time. And you can relate to people quite a bit. Like, you read these ancient stories, you can really relate to them, even people many thousands of years ago. So I think here in the episode I finally stop talking about something kind of along those lines, and I return to discussing the merits of this particular event. One of these years I'll get around to doing that. But yeah, just to kind of, I guess, because I'm still ranting back in the old audio, like you can, I think at the end of the day, if historical fiction has any like deep merit to it beyond just the merit any kind of creative work has, it's that it allows modern people to get to use the perspectives of the ancient situations people were in to kind of compare their current environment without, and I think the best historical fiction doesn't come in with like a particular outcome in mind, right? Obviously lots of great, for example, like a historical fiction that I really like is the, let's see, what's a good example here? There is historical fiction out there that does have a position or sort of historical adjacent fiction. Like, for example, I think the Song of Ice and Fire book series, Game of Thrones, I think that series and that franchise has a existing position on the sort of, I mean, it's not historical fiction, but it's like sort of historical style fiction, where it's actually, okay, here we go, finally I stopped talking about this. So here I'm like debating the actual merits of the event. Lose 1,000 gold, get 12% reduced noble happiness, or get 12% noble happiness for 60 months. And I note here that this is a terrible trade-off, and I should just pay the gold and not get that modifier. So I'll return, because I later in the episode I start ranting again, so I'll return to it later. But basically, just to finish it now, I really like Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones because it presents essentially a fantasy version of a historical setting based on the kind of medieval Europe and whatnot, but it doesn't it lets you draw your own conclusions about the morality of those systems, and I think ultimately is quite a effective piece of storytelling about perhaps why we shouldn't blindly valorize the Middle Ages of Europe as something really great that we should aspire to be like. And I think it effectively shows some of the problems with that, without necessarily being just like literal historical fiction. So anyways, that's basically in the episodes. I was ranting about something kind of along those lines. I think I went on a really long rant there in the original audio about like different media depicting ancient Rome in different ways, and how annoyed I was that a lot of people still, not really my audience, because I know people that watch a historical game like this are generally interested in history and like to learn and are interested in the actual history. I think a lot of people that, have been misled by popular culture envision ancient civilizations in this very, very monolithic way, in this very uncritical way, and don't think about the fact that these were civilizations, right? These were complicated, nuanced environments with a lot going on. So ultimately, all I can ask of anyone is, I'm not telling you to agree with my politics or my viewpoints of the world, just to, have an open mind and consider that, in thousands of years from now, if somebody remembered our modern world and only thought about one group of people with one viewpoint and said that was what this world was, and ignored the extreme diversity of opinion and diversity of people who had different worldviews and experiences, and just pretended that wasn't the case. Similarly, we can't remember the ancient world as monolithic. We can't remember the Roman world as a bunch of Italian Latins, running around, and that was it. Like, it was this very diverse, very kind of complicated environment with a lot going on and a lot of issues and concerns that we just don't really have a perspective on or don't have a comparison to. So with that point noted, here I'm continuing my roading. My plan with the road up in northern Ebla is to basically do a big loop. And at this point I decide I'm going to keep the city of, I think it's called Yafat in the middle there, as kind of a, sort of like what I did in the south with, I think, what was it called? Curel, something with a Q, where I had built a city in the south to add another kind of road loop for. Yafat is so central in sort of the Ebla loop that I decide I'm going to keep that city there and use it as a crossroad to have northern Ebla be pretty interconnected. And this is one of my Borderlands areas, so having a lot of roading up here is actually strategically a good idea. So I do decide to do that. I'm going to first build a road out to Hermesh. I only need really one road connecting to it, as it is kind of out on the edge here. Noting as well, by the way, that Arna does still have 2 settlements that are in the region that I need to seize from them. I don't get around to doing it this episode, but I do eventually note that, and I do plan to go for it in future episodes as well. Also, my PI continues to build up as I do this roading, and again, one of the reasons I'm doing so much roading in this episode and kind of just chilling like this is that I'm waiting around for the PI to build up, so it is kind of just a waiting game. Here I finish the road up to Rabat Aman, so now I send these guys back down to continue roading down towards Eloth. Ultimately, they can road from Sowar down to Eloth, so we basically end up with this loop around the southern side of the Black Sea, of the Dead Sea, and the road to Eloth can just be one long road, to be fully honest. Don't really need lots of roads down there. In contrast, up here, where things are a bit lusher and we have some more cities to work with, we're going to road over to Hermesh and then double back along the side of the river, basically, and road up to whatever that city is called, the one just above my mouse there. I don't remember. If only I could check, but no, we're doing the post-commentary, so it is not to be. Yeah, so we rode up here to Ebla. I do ultimately think I made the right call keeping the tile of Ebla as the capital up here. It is a bit far away from the other cities that I've chosen, the other spots that I've chosen, but it is good terrain, and it's also a pre-existing city, and it's the actual tile of Ebla, which, probably should be a city, just to be consistent with the region being called Ebla, and probably the province being called Ebla as well. So, whatever the case. Basically, I'm bouncing back and forth between my 2 sides of the road network, getting everything roaded up here. And I arrive here, I get to work on the road down through Zofar. Excuse me, oh my gosh. Sorry about that sneeze there. Ooh, oh my gosh. And now I start the road project down to Zofar, and then from Zofar it'll go down all the way to Eloth. Back up in the north, I'm noting here my plans to keep Yafat as this sort of central crossroads. Finish the road over to Hermesh, and then I double back over here. I'm saying something at this point, I guess, about this side of the Ebla region. I think at this point I'm talking about the Arna thing, that I want to eventually seize these tiles from Arna, Malal, and Gasun, which I think are in my province. So we'll have to worry about that later. Really, it's just about getting to that before Mari gets to it. It's not a huge priority, obviously, but I really don't want Mari to seize parts of Ebla. And I will eventually have to fight Mari, my plan is to eventually take on Mari and seize control of the Canaanite areas from them, as I've talked about before. But at this point, I am, not ready quite yet to go for Mari, so I do need to make these plans quite carefully. I'm continuing the loop up to Hantatine, which is my northernmost city in Ebla, and then I'll loop back around and do the crossroads through Yafat. So, yeah, there's lots of road building, basically. And again, I'm waiting for 180 PI to get the Wonder construction started. So, as we proceed along, I continue my road project here. Scroll back down, scroll back up. Yeah, this is what the whole episode basically was, to be fully honest. And we are almost getting our forces met up together at Hantatine here. For some reason, I paused the game to talk about something. I don't remember what I was talking about here. Probably more ancient Rome depiction discourse. But, yeah, I really genuinely do recommend HBO's Rome. If you're interested in ancient history, even though, it's about Republican Rome, it, I think, is a good depiction of just an ancient society. And I've talked before in videos about this, but I really like the fact that in realistic and authentic depictions like, HBO's Rome, and one can point out that HBO's Rome does have some historical inaccuracy with some of the specifics of, what different people did in, the timeline. But its overall depiction of society, of ancient Roman society, was really authentic. Because something it captured really well was the really commonplace role of spirituality like in the ancient world, and I'm not an expert, but one of my favorite things that I learned when I was, in school, taking classes about ancient history and whatnot, is that to ancient people, everything in the world had a religious explanation. And there are people in the modern day that have the same viewpoint, but to the ancient people, there was no alternative, right? Speaking of religion, we have our omen to pick, we just go for Shoppish again. To ancient people, there was no equivalent really to like modern science, right? Like there were scientific ideas in the ancient times held by some, but it was really like a minority thing. And for the average person, everything in the world was driven by not just kind of like vague spirituality, but really particular ideas about relationships between the gods and people and the gods in different societies. I mean, for example, in the Roman world, one of the main anxieties of the Roman state was that if they didn't do things in exact accordance with the ancient traditions, that the gods of Rome would be upset with them and wouldn't help them anymore. Like it was literally seen as like a, it was seen almost like in kind of a what would you call it? Like kind of a pragmatic view, right? Like it wasn't just we should be religious and do these like religious practices because it's sort of generally good to be religious. It was that if we're not doing our religious rituals exactly right, like Jupiter will like stop favoring our nation and we're going to be in trouble. And like that was like part of the way the Romans thought about religion, was like as a quid pro quo where, hey Jupiter, we'll sacrifice all these goats to you and in exchange help us beat the Samnites. Like that's like how they thought about it to some extent, which is just such a different way. Like modern day religion is much more, I think, sort of unilateral, where it's like I'm not a religious person, so I don't want to speak for religious people or misframe things, but I think it's fair generally to say that modern religious people, whatever your religion might be, tend to have a religious viewpoint of like, I'm religious because it's the correct way to be, not I'm religious. It's like the ancient Romans all followed Pascal's gamble, that philosophical idea. Like the ancient societies were like, we're religious because we think we're gonna like our state will fall if we're not, right? Not we're religious because we must be. It's kind of a particular nuance, but it's just something about like HBO's Rome that I think they captured really well. Just the commonplace role of these different traditions and whatnot. Here I'm noticing, by the way, that I forgot to do my War Council on 9/35, 1st of January. I guess on top of forgetting to set up my audio correctly, I made that mistake as well. So it's fine though, because we're almost at 180. I'll just do the War Council in 940 and just have it happen on the 10-year tick going forward. We literally have nobody that we border that we really need or want claims on, so I'm not even sure a War Council would have really helped. I would have probably gotten a claim on like Arna, which I think I already have a claim on them, so I don't really think it would have been necessary. So really just the smallest of micro mistakes, not a big deal at all. So here I'm continuing the road along. We hit 180 PI, and at this point I get pretty excited. It's time to build the Wonder. So I crack open the Wonder Builder. Got the Wonder construction already set up. I get the name proper as well. The Tomb of the Aberids. And there I put the S in. And then I have to reselect my effects in the right order. It being in the right order is not actually like a real issue, but it's just I want it to be in the order alphabetically. So Expanding Culture 3, Pop Conversion Speed, Pop Assimilation Speed 30%, and then Honored Leader, Integrated Culture Happiness 15%, and Monthly Ruler Popularity, I think that's plus 0.15 or plus 0.5, plus 0.15. And then Omen Observations 3, 15% Omen Power. At this point, I also know that I need to get a good Wonder Construction Leader selected. And this looks for somebody with really high Civic. And Civic is is Civic the right term? Finesse, really high finesse. And there is such a character, Tabnet Milkermaid, a young guy who has 2 Wonder Construction bonus traits. He's 16 years old, so I think he just entered into an age that we can use him. Really good character. Actually, a really promising governor character as well. But for now, we'll assign him that cuts down our number of days needed by a lot. Only about 18 years, I believe. Although I noticed that I don't have any gold in the province. I'm not sure actually, even to this point, whether having gold available for the Wonder Construction, what that means for the construction progression, whether it's faster or cheaper or whatnot. But just to be safe, I do cancel the saffron trades to get 1 gold trade going. I think I'd previously traded for gold, and I think I may want to actually get the gold surplus again anyways for its surplus value. So here I go back. Now you can see I've got stone and gold, so that's good. I have to reselect my wonder effects. So we go for, not that one, we go for expanding culture 3, come back down, and find honored leader. For some reason I can never find anything in that list fast at all, so then we scroll all the way down to get the omen one as well. There we go. Reappoint that young guy. Here I talk about the bonuses. I just mentioned it a minute ago, so I'm not going to say it again, but we reappoint that young guy, Tabnet. Ultimately about 10k gold, 180 PI, and about almost 7,000 days to complete, which is about 20 years, a little bit less than 20 years. So actually, in all honesty, quite a speedy construction for a wonder of this grandeur and whatnot. So the Tomb of the Abrids, we're ready to finally start building the Great Wonder, the first wonder of the campaign. I do want to have multiple wonders eventually, but this is the first one. And as I've said before, my reasons for picking these particular effects, both for roleplay reasons and for actual meta gameplay reasons. These are strong effects to have for this campaign. And I go ahead and begin the construction of the Tomb of the Abrids in Dammâseq. So, finally, we get it going. And with that, one of my goals with Ahiram is completed, as it's now under construction. You can see the icon has appeared already. There's a sort of construction graphic on the Dammâseq tile, and I can't look to see at the window. I actually didn't think to click it, but there's the Wonder tab on Dammâseq now. So that's pretty great, and we can see now on the tooltip there, or the side of the, I don't remember what it's called, the side of the screen, the outliner, right, the outliner. Tomb of the Abrids is visible there with the days remaining. So it's going to be about a 20-year build. I don't know if changing populations will slow that down or speed it up, but it should be about 20 years. I don't anticipate that it will be finished while Ahiram still lives, but his son, who should, I'm actually looking at him on the screen right now, his son Daniel, who should become Daniel II, should oversee its completion. Here I decide to destroy a few more cities, because now that I've started building this wonder, I'm feeling a bit tyrannical, you know, so I'm going around finding some extra cities I can get rid of. I destroyed that city that was in like a mountain valley. That should have been destroyed probably 100 years ago, so finally get around to it. And one of the reasons I make such a big deal about destroying or revoking cities from bad locations isn't because it's like bad objectively for a city to exist in a bad location. It's because those cities being there locks up that population, and also not only attracts pops to move into that bad location where they're less efficient, but it also holds the population that's there already in the bad location when they could be migrating to better city locations that are going to lead to a more productive outcome. So it is really like micromanagey. So here I am also finishing the loop in the middle around Yafat. This is why I decided to keep the city. I think I also either here or a bit later on decided to fortify it further as well to really note that it's going to be a permanent city. We have a trade hub developing in an Asdod where we have a couple options of getting a couple different types of pops. Ultimately, I decided to go for the citizens because it's always great to have more Dammâseq citizens. Even if they're in a bad spot, they'll migrate to a city. And I guess that is already a city, to be fair. But they'll migrate probably to a provincial capital and be a bit more productive over there. Here, the Eloth road journey continues. These guys are very, very slowly moving through here. Moab and Adam will never be fast to move through, but with the road to Eloth, it will be a lot faster. And it's good just to have that road defensively, as the local levy is non-existent or very small. So the nearest large army, the Canaan levy, has to travel down to Eloth on foot, so the road will speed that up quite a bit. Here I'm just getting the crossroad situation fully worked out here, with Yafat connecting down to the road between Grow and whatever the one next to it is, Taibei. And we're also going to have a connection between what's that one called? Somalil, I think, and then Yafat. I don't remember the names of any of these places. So we're getting everything connected here. So we're also going to connect on this southern side from Grow to the one to the west, just to get everything connected. Yeah, there I go with the road orders. So just the last little bit of roading up here, just to connect all the provincial capitals together. Ebla is basically a giant, flat, like circular plain. So all these provinces along the edges. There's so much kind of like spiderweb style road construction to do to get them all connected to each other, so that's really what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to both get all the provincial capitals to be a road movement from each other, and also not just road every tile everywhere, which I could eventually do for maximum economic bonuses, as roads do provide small economic bonuses to their tiles, but it is a huge commitment to do that much roading, so I don't I've said before that I will eventually perhaps do that in some of my cores, but for now, not the case. Ahiram's now in poor health, so he is declining, and his sister wife, she is on the old side as well. Fortunately, they're both, well, she at least is too old to have kids, so here I get the chance to trade more manpower for 40 PI. I'm not saving PI at this point, but this is still a good trade at this time, so I do go for it. And I can save up the PI for some more uses later on. But yeah, what I was saying a minute ago is that, at least because we have this incest marriage, it's with characters that are likely too old to have kids, so if they are, God forbid, having incestuous encounters, hopefully they're not, it's just a political marriage, but if they are, it's not likely to produce kids, so that's ideal at least. Yeah, so that's good. And so, but whatever the case, Ahiram is definitely getting older, and I'm actually kind of excited for this succession because Daniel would be one of my younger kings. He's not as young as, because Imperator was 27 when the game began, so he was the youngest king at his ascension, but for some reason, Daniel is much, much younger than his father. He's only at this point in his early 30s, so if the succession happens soon, we'd have quite a young king, which is quite nice, as we've had a number of I guess Abdishart was pretty young. I think Abdishart was in his 40s or 50s when he came to the throne. But yeah, ultimately, I am excited for the succession for Daniel to come to the throne. Daniel's a pretty good character as well, so not that Ahiram, isn't a character that I enjoy playing as, but he is basically, and I think in some ways, also I decide here to get rid of the city as well. I just decided to do a few more city revocations because I'm feeling tyrannical, but I think in many ways I feel that I can compare Ahiram with his, let's see here, great-grandmother, Arashat, who they both were sort of follow-ups to what I consider my greater rulers, and they both kind of did sort of second wars that were a bit less effective. So like Arashat had this kind of second war, I believe, against Ebla that was kind of messy and was successful but wasn't super, super successful. And then she didn't live a long time. She was old when she came to the throne. And she basically just kind of cleaned up and sort of like solidified the gains of her father, Imperator. Whereas similarly, I think Ahiram, he had the second Kemetic War, which was successful but sort of less successful than the first Kemetic War of his father, Abdishart. So I sort of hope you're seeing the comparison I'm making here, that in many ways I think Ahiram is comparable to Arashat in terms of his place in the history of the Abirid family. But I do think he was a little bit more overall better as a ruler than Arashat, although I do think she was okay. I think that she just didn't really have the chance to shine. I mean, really, I think the defining feature of her reign was her killing her grandchildren to set up Abdishart's ascension, which actually did work out quite well. Abdishart did do very, very good things for the state. So, yeah, whatever the case, I'm excited to do the sort of narrative Let's Play roleplay campaign that I talked about in my post, where I can come up with some sort of fun storylines for these characters to flesh out these scenarios. But even just in the actual campaign, I feel like I've done quite a bit of storytelling. So here I'm noting that I want to set up a colony at Eloth, but incredibly, the game thinks that Taba, right there, that like desert tile, is a better spot for the colony, so that's not going to happen. So I have to not set up the colony at Eloth, but I do note this in a second here, I can set up a Nabatean colony at Zophar, which I end up deciding to do after looking around. We're at this point where there's a lot of cultural diversity in the south, but it's all very scattered. So setting up these colonies is a little convoluted to sort of organize, but here I do set up this Nabatean colony at Zophar, which I do end up deciding to do just to further build. I also decide to start a city construction at Zophar after this. Zophar is my provincial colony of that province, so I do think it is worthwhile to invest into it. I'm not trying to build, giant metropolises in Moab and Adam, but having a couple of cities down here is worthwhile. There is a lot of population living just out in the sort of wilderness, so I want to draw them into cities where they're going to be a bit more productive. And building a city at Zophar lets me get some more provincial loyalty buildings as well, so that's pretty handy as well. So here I am now noting that I can use my PI for things, so I'm going to look for some uses. Here I go back to my standard of looking for places to switch from assimilation to Borderlands for more manpower. So Jordan is now able to be switched over. I'm not sure why Jordan wasn't on Borderlands before. It may have been switched over before for some reason, but I switch it back. Yisrael as well can be switched over. And then Byblos and Dor are both at 75, and I decide that that's probably fine to switch them over now. Also noting that I'm now going to go up to 100 Tyranny when I do this, and then I think, what happens if I do this and spend Tyranny when I'm at 100? And the answer, as it turns out, is that when I do this, I actually just don't go over 100 Tyranny. So I'm now at 100 Tyranny, so that's not great, but I am trying to lower my Tyranny, so we're going to have to wait on that. At this point, though, we don't really need Tyranny room for anything, so not too big of a deal. I can now lower the Canaan Levy now that the Eloth Road is done. And in the north, I believe, I don't remember if I lowered them already, but in the north, I was using the Kadesh levies. I think I may have lowered them already. I'm not entirely sure. I did I haven't. No, I think I have lowered them already. So yeah, they're lowered already. So at this point, I'm basically sort of starting to wrap up the episode, saying now I've finished all my roads. We're going to see what I end up deciding to do next. I don't really know what my next direction to go in. At this point, I basically am planning to just kind of ride out the remainder of Ahiram's reign and let him have a pretty chill end to his life. He did accomplish some good things in his time, and he's now in either poor or very poor health. We're going to do a bit more colonization here, by the way, just to grab a couple spots that we can here and there, but we don't have a lot of good options to pick between. So yeah, at this point I'm basically, and this is also my thinking at this point before I do the next recording, is that I'm going to let Ahiram have a pretty relaxing final couple years. No more wars, just kind of coasting along. The Wonder construction's underway. Do a bit more colonization here and there as I spot options, but ultimately, no big plans for the rest of his reign. We'll let his very capable son Daniel take over for future conflicts. Probably a third Kemetic war is definitely on the cards, or perhaps even a war with Mari. So we shall see what happens. Whatever the case, thank you so much for watching this post-commentary version of the Dammâseq campaign, and I'll see you all next time.